Every human being carries within them an immense, untapped force, a power so profound that it can alter the direction of their life in an instant. Yet, most people spend their entire lives unaware of it, walking through each day with a quiet sense of limitation, as if their potential were locked behind invisible walls. Unlimited Power, by Tony Robbins, begins by shaking that illusion to its core. Robbins challenges us to look deeply within and realize that we are not victims of circumstance, nor prisoners of our past. We are architects, creators, of our experience. The power that shapes our destiny doesn't lie in external events, but in our ability to interpret, respond, and use those events to our advantage. It all begins with understanding one truth. Human beings are not limited by their resources. They are limited by their resourcefulness. Every action, every result, every feeling we experience is born from our internal world, our beliefs, our language, and the images we hold in our minds. Robbins explains that the difference between the successful and the unsuccessful, between joy and despair, between growth and stagnation, lies not in what happens to them, but in how they use what happens. The moment you take full responsibility for your life, not partial, not conditional, but absolute responsibility, you open the gateway to power. Most people never do this. They wait for circumstances to change, for luck to favor them, for the world to hand them opportunities. But the truth is, power doesn't wait to be given, it's claimed. It's claimed the moment you decide that you are the cause, not the effect. Robbins says that the quality of your life is the quality of your communication, not only with others but with yourself. What you say internally becomes your reality. The questions you ask yourself every day shape your focus, and what you focus on expands. Most people ask questions like, "Why can't I succeed?" or "Why does this always happen to me?" And their brain obliges by finding reasons to justify failure. But the masters of life, those who unlock their unlimited power, ask different questions. How can I make this work? What can I learn from this? What's great about this situation that I haven't noticed yet? These questions redirect energy. They shift emotion. They build momentum. And that is where transformation begins, not outside, but in the mind's silent dialogue with itself. Think about it. Everything that's ever been achieved in history, every innovation, every movement, every work of art, every business empire, started as a thought. A spark of possibility in someone's mind who refused to accept limits. Robbins teaches that our thoughts are not random, they're patterns. And when we master those patterns, we master our results. We can reprogram our nervous system to associate pleasure with empowering behaviors and pain with destructive ones. This is the essence of neuroassociative conditioning, one of Robbins' key teachings. The mind works on associations. It seeks pleasure and avoids pain. If you attach massive pleasure to taking action and unbearable pain to inaction, you'll naturally move forward. Power doesn't come from discipline alone. It comes from intelligent conditioning. In Unlimited Power, Robbins makes it clear that motivation without direction is chaos. You can be fired up and yet going nowhere if your mental maps are wrong. The secret is not just to feel good, but to know how to create the state of mind that leads to consistent, effective action. He shows that peak performance is a science, a replicable formula based on physiology, focus, and language. The way you use your body, your posture, your breathing, your movement, instantly affects your emotional state. Change your physiology, and you change your feelings. Change your language, and you change your belief. Change your focus, and you change your destiny. It's all connected. The mind, body, and emotions form a system, and once you understand how that system works, you can direct it at will. But why, then, do so few people live with this kind of power? Robbins answers simply, because they've been conditioned to believe they don't have it. Society teaches conformity, not mastery. From childhood, we're told what we can and can't do, what's realistic, what's safe. We absorb those messages until they become part of our identity. But identity is the ultimate governor of behavior. Once you see yourself as limited, you'll act accordingly. The great revolution of unlimited power begins with changing that identity. You are not your past. You are not your failures. You are not your fears. You are whatever you decide to become, right now, through conscious choice. Tony Robbins doesn't ask for blind positivity. He demands personal truth, an honest look at the patterns that run your life. He shows that every emotion, every decision, every success or failure is guided by a set of rules and beliefs that can be rewritten. The process begins with awareness, but it doesn't stop there. Awareness must be followed by new action, consistent, focused, intelligent action. Because knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential power. It only becomes real when it's applied. Imagine for a moment what would happen if you began to live as if you already possessed unlimited power, as if there were no limits to your growth, your energy, your love, your ability to influence and create. What would you attempt? What fears would dissolve? What vision would ignite? Robbins' message is simple. The greatest tragedy is not that people aim too high and miss, but that they aim too low and hit. Your potential is waiting, not in some future moment, not when you earn more or have more, but now, in the choices you make and the standards you set. The first step is to awaken to the truth that you are already powerful, and your life is the direct reflection of how you choose to use that power. Unlimited Power is not a book about motivation, it's a manual for mastery. It's an invitation to reclaim authorship of your own story, to recognize that every emotion, every setback, and every triumph is part of a system you control. And once you understand that, life changes forever. Because the moment you decide that your future is no longer a matter of chance but of choice, your entire being aligns with a new energy. You stop reacting and start creating. You stop wishing and start deciding. And in that moment, your power becomes, truly, unlimited. Excellence is not a gift granted to a chosen few. It is a discipline, a science, and above all, a decision. Tony Robbins teaches that success leaves clues. Every result in life, whether it's mastery in business, art, sport, or relationships, is not random. It follows patterns, specific behaviors, beliefs, and mental strategies that anyone can model and reproduce. This is the foundation of Robbins' philosophy, that if one person can do something, anyone can learn to do it, provided they discover the strategy behind it. Excellence, therefore, is not about talent or luck. It's about modeling, understanding how successful people think, act, and feel, and then conditioning yourself to do the same until it becomes automatic. In Unlimited Power, Robbins introduces us to the idea that our nervous system functions like a computer. Whatever program we run determines our results. If we can decode the software of those who achieve extraordinary outcomes, we can install that same programming within ourselves. This process begins with neurolinguistic programming, NLP, the study of how language, both verbal and nonverbal, influences our mind and body. Robbins demonstrates that every person who excels in any area has internal representations, mental movies, sounds, and feelings that trigger specific states of excellence. They have precise ways of using their body, their focus, and their internal dialogue. Once you uncover these patterns, you can replicate them. You can model a champion's mindset, a leader's confidence, a negotiator's influence, or an athlete's calm under pressure. Think about it. A professional athlete visualizes success long before stepping into the arena. Their breathing, posture, and focus all align toward one outcome, victory. The same principle applies to every domain. Robbins explains that people who achieve consistently have mastered their state, the physical and emotional condition they're in when they act. If you're in a disempowered state, your decisions are weak, your creativity collapses, and your results suffer. But when you learn to manage your state, to generate confidence, certainty, and enthusiasm on command, you gain the ability to perform at your best, regardless of circumstances. This is what Robbins calls state management, and it's one of the pillars of personal excellence. He explains that our state is determined by three elements, what he calls the triad: physiology, focus, and language. The way you use your body affects how you feel, the things you focus on determine what you experience, and the words you use shape your meaning. Change any one of these, and your emotional experience shifts instantly. For example, if you stand tall, breathe deeply, and smile, it's almost impossible to feel depressed. If you focus on gratitude, your mind cannot dwell in fear. If you speak to yourself with power, saying, "I will find a way," instead of, "I can't handle this," your entire energy changes. Robbins emphasizes that excellence begins with mastering this triad, because emotions drive behavior, and behavior drives results. The key is not to wait for confidence or motivation, but to create them deliberately through your own physiology, focus, and language. Tony Robbins also introduces the concept of modeling excellence, studying people who are already producing the results you desire and uncovering how they do it, consciously or unconsciously. He shares that geniuses in every field are not magical beings. They have simply developed patterns that work. If you want to be great in business, find someone who has achieved extraordinary business success and model not just their actions but their mindset. How they think, how they approach problems, how they view failure, how they use language to influence themselves and others. Robbins says that when you model excellence, you compress decades of trial and error into days. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You only have to understand how the wheel works and then apply it in your own way. Excellence, then, is not about perfection, it's about pattern mastery. And those patterns are available to anyone who's willing to observe, learn, and apply. Robbins points out that our lives are ruled by habits, small, repetitive behaviors that either empower us or enslave us. The person who wakes up early, visualizes success, practices gratitude, and takes consistent action will eventually outperform the one who relies on willpower alone. The reason is simple. Consistency creates certainty, and certainty creates momentum. Excellence is built through repetition, and repetition becomes identity. Once something becomes part of who you are, not just what you do, it becomes effortless. In the science of personal excellence, Robbins teaches that beliefs play a crucial role. Your beliefs are like operating commands. They tell your brain what's possible and what's off-limits. If you believe you're not capable, your mind will unconsciously sabotage you. But if you believe there's always a way, you'll find it. Robbins often says, beliefs have the power to create and the power to destroy. Excellence begins when you take control of that power, when you consciously choose beliefs that serve you. Beliefs are not facts. They are interpretations reinforced by emotion and experience. The good news is, they can be changed in a moment. One new experience, one powerful decision, one emotional breakthrough can rewrite years of limitation. Robbins calls this process changing your personal syntax, the order in which you process reality. Just as a computer's output depends on its code, your emotions and actions depend on your mental syntax, how you link experiences, meanings, and emotions together. Successful people run empowering syntax. They see challenges as opportunities, setbacks as lessons, and success as inevitable. When you shift your mental syntax, you shift the entire structure of your experience. Suddenly, things that used to intimidate you become exciting. Failure becomes fuel. Fear becomes focus. But Robbins is clear, knowing this intellectually is not enough. Excellence requires conditioning. You must train your nervous system to respond with power, not weakness. Every time you push yourself beyond comfort, you send a signal to your brain that you're growing. Every time you act in spite of fear, you teach your body courage. Every time you celebrate your wins, you wire confidence deeper into your identity. Over time, these micro-actions create a new emotional blueprint. Excellence becomes your default state. The science of personal excellence, therefore, is the science of control, not over others but over yourself. It's about realizing that your destiny is not written by fate, but by patterns. Patterns that you can learn, modify, and perfect. When you commit to mastering these inner mechanics, you stop being a creature of reaction and become a creator of results. Robbins' message resounds through every page. You can model greatness, and you can live it. The laws of success are not reserved for the few. They're available to anyone who's willing to study, practice, and persist. Excellence is not an event. It's a habit, a system, a way of being. When you embrace this truth, the illusion of limitation begins to fade. You start to see that success is not mysterious. It's mechanical. It's governed by principles as real as gravity, and once you learn to align with those principles, you gain control of your destiny. You stop hoping for better circumstances and begin engineering them. Beliefs are the invisible forces that shape our reality. They determine not only what we think is possible, but also what we dare to attempt. Tony Robbins calls beliefs the compass and the map of human behavior. They guide every action, define every emotion, and dictate the boundaries of what we consider achievable. Every person alive is controlled, to a certain degree, by their beliefs. The problem is that most people have never consciously chosen them. They inherited them, from parents, teachers, culture, or past experiences, and now live their lives according to invisible rules that they didn't write. Robbins invites us to question those rules. He reminds us that if beliefs can be learned, they can also be unlearned. If they were created, they can be recreated. And in that realization lies true freedom. A belief is nothing more than a feeling of certainty about something. When you believe something, you stop questioning it. It becomes a command to your brain. If you believe you're not good enough, your mind finds evidence to confirm it. If you believe you're unstoppable, your brain filters the world through that lens too. Robbins explains that our brains are like heat-seeking missiles. They always find what they're programmed to find. That programming is our belief system. The difference between a person who constantly struggles and one who thrives is often not intelligence, luck, or resources. It's belief. One sees limitations, the other sees possibilities. And because both believe, both are right, within their own world. But how do beliefs form? Robbins says they are built through reference experiences, moments charged with emotion that we interpret as truth. The more emotional intensity attached to a thought, the stronger the belief becomes. A child who's told repeatedly that they're not smart eventually accepts it as fact, even if it's not true. A person who experiences one painful rejection may begin to believe they're unlovable. Over time, those beliefs harden into identity. I'm just not good at this. I'll never succeed. I'm not that kind of person. But identity, Robbins says, is the most powerful force in human psychology. We always act in alignment with who we think we are. You can change your behavior temporarily, but until you change your identity, lasting transformation is impossible. Think about how often people sabotage themselves because their behavior clashes with their identity. Someone who identifies as a smoker may try to quit, but they're fighting their self-concept. A person who says, I'm terrible with money, may earn more, but they'll unconsciously spend it all. Our identity acts as a thermostat. If our results rise above our internal setting, we find ways to cool things down. If we fall too low, we turn the heat back up. True change, therefore, requires a shift in identity, not just doing something new, but becoming someone new. Robbins teaches that when you expand your identity, your entire life expands with it. He uses a powerful phrase, the strongest force in the human personality is the need to remain consistent with how we define ourselves. That's why beliefs about identity matter more than any external strategy. You can have all the techniques in the world, but if you don't believe you're worthy of success, you'll never sustain it. You might lose weight, but gain it back. You might start a business, but self-sabotage when success arrives. Because deep down, your identity will always pull you back to what feels familiar. The good news is, identity is not fixed. It's fluid, flexible, and can be redesigned consciously. Robbins shows that to change your belief system, you must first interrupt the pattern. You have to shake the old associations that reinforce limiting beliefs and replace them with new ones that empower you. That begins with questioning, is this belief true? Who told me this? What if the opposite were true? Once you create uncertainty around a limiting belief, it begins to lose power. Then you replace it with a new belief that serves you, one backed by strong emotional evidence. For example, instead of saying, I'm terrible with people, you might say, every day I'm learning to connect more deeply. It's not about lying to yourself, it's about creating a new emotional reference system. Robbins also emphasizes the power of language in shaping beliefs. The words we use create our emotional world. If you describe your life as a disaster, your nervous system reacts accordingly. Stress floods your body. But if you call the same situation a challenge, your brain looks for solutions. Language is not just a tool for communication, it's a tool for transformation. By changing your vocabulary, you can literally change your experience of life. This is why Robbins insists on using empowering metaphors and words. He doesn't say problems, he says situations. He doesn't say failure, he says feedback. Because every label carries a feeling, and every feeling creates a state, and every state drives an action. Another core belief Robbins instills is that everything happens for a reason and a purpose, and it serves us. This belief doesn't deny pain or tragedy, it reclaims power from them. It's a belief that turns suffering into strength, confusion into clarity, and loss into learning. It's a mindset that allows resilience to flourish. Because when you believe life happens for you, not to you, your mind searches for meaning instead of misery. You grow instead of shrink. You lead instead of react. To reprogram beliefs permanently, Robbins uses neuroassociative conditioning, linking massive pleasure to empowering beliefs and massive pain to limiting ones. For example, If you deeply associate pain with procrastination and pleasure with taking action, your behavior will automatically shift. The brain always seeks to avoid pain and gain pleasure. That's the law of human motivation. The secret is to condition your nervous system so that your empowering beliefs feel natural, desirable, and rewarding. Over time, your identity catches up to your new reality. Perhaps the most profound insight from Robbins is that our identity is not something we find, it's something we create. We have the privilege and the responsibility to define who we are. Every day, with every thought and action, we are sculpting that identity. You can choose to be a victim or a creator, a survivor or a leader. You can decide that you are strong, capable, and unstoppable, and once that decision becomes belief, it begins to shape every cell in your body. The nervous system doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. It simply responds to what you feed it consistently. So, ask yourself, who am I becoming? Not in the sense of what others see, but in the quiet spaces where only you can hear your own voice. Because that identity, the one you repeat, reinforce, and emotionally charge, is the foundation of your destiny. Robbins reminds us that if we want to live an extraordinary life, we must adopt extraordinary beliefs, beliefs that empower, uplift, and expand. The moment you believe you have the power to change, you already have. Because belief precedes reality. What you hold as true becomes the blueprint your mind and body follow. In the end, the power of belief and identity is the power to rewrite your story. You are not limited by your past. You are defined by the meaning you give it. And when that meaning becomes one of strength, growth, and possibility, you step into a life that reflects your highest self. Change your beliefs, and you change your life. Every decision you make, every word you speak, and every action you take comes from one place, the emotional state you're in at that moment. Tony Robbins says, the difference between those who succeed and those who fail is not the events they face, but the state they live in. Because emotion is what drives motion. The state you are in determines the quality of your decisions, the level of your creativity, and the strength of your resilience. Yet, most people drift through life allowing their emotions to control them instead of learning to control their emotions. Robbins shows us that emotional mastery is not a mystery. It's a skill, a practice, and ultimately, a habit that anyone can learn. He teaches that the human nervous system is like a powerful engine, but most of us drive it blindfolded. We feel good or bad without understanding why. We say, I'm in a bad mood, as if the emotion came from nowhere, but every emotional state has a pattern. Change the pattern, and you change the emotion. Robbins calls this state management, and it's one of the foundational principles of personal power. He explains that your emotional state at any given moment is determined by three factors, what he calls the triad: physiology, focus, and language. These three levers control how you feel. Learn to use them consciously, and you can command your emotions instead of being at their mercy. Let's start with physiology, the body. Every emotion you feel has a corresponding physical pattern. When you're confident, you stand tall, breathe deeply, move quickly. When you're depressed, your shoulders slump, your breathing becomes shallow, your voice softens. Robbins teaches that emotion follows motion. Change the way you move, and your feelings change instantly. If you want to feel energized, move like someone who's energized. If you want to feel powerful, stand like someone who's powerful. The body and mind are one system, and the fastest way to shift the mind is through the body. That's why Robbins uses movement, gestures, and high energy in his seminars. He's conditioning people to experience new emotions through new physiology. The second lever is focus. Whatever you focus on, you feel. Focus acts like a mental camera lens. It magnifies whatever you point it at. If you focus on what's missing, you'll feel lack. If you focus on what you have, you'll feel abundance. Two people can experience the exact same event, yet one feels crushed while the other feels empowered, simply because they focused on different aspects of the situation. Robbins teaches us to ask better questions to control focus. Instead of, why is this happening to me? He asks, what's great about this? Or, how can I use this? Those questions shift attention from pain to possibility. And since your brain always finds answers to the questions you ask, mastering focus is mastering emotion. The third lever is language, the words you use internally and externally. Language shapes meaning, and meaning shapes emotion. If you describe a setback as the end of the world, your nervous system reacts with panic. If you call it a challenge or a temporary obstacle, you feel composed and capable. Robbins calls this the transformational vocabulary, the conscious choice of words that upgrade your emotional experience. He challenges people to replace words like furious with a little annoyed or depressed with disappointed. Because language isn't just communication, it's programming. Each word carries emotional intensity, and when you downgrade or reframe that intensity, your emotional state changes instantly. When these three forces, physiology, focus, and language, align, they create your emotional state. And that state determines your behavior and your results. Robbins says that success is 80% psychology and 20% mechanics. You can have the perfect strategy, but if you're in the wrong state, you'll sabotage yourself. On the other hand, even if you lack resources, if you're in a powerful state, confident, creative, determined, you'll find a way. That's why emotional mastery is not optional. It's essential. It's the ultimate edge in life. But how do we maintain a peak state consistently? Robbins reveals that emotion is a habit, a pattern of how you use your body, what you focus on, and how you speak to yourself. Most people have habitual emotions. They live primarily in stress, frustration, or worry because they've practiced those emotions unconsciously for years. To change your emotional life, you must break the old pattern and replace it with a new one. This requires conditioning, repetition. Every time you catch yourself slipping into an old emotion and deliberately shift your state, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching your nervous system that you, not your environment, control how you feel. Over time, empowerment becomes your default. Robbins often says, leaders are those who manage their state, even when circumstances don't cooperate. Life will always throw challenges your way. The difference lies in whether you react emotionally or respond intelligently. Emotional mastery doesn't mean suppressing feelings, it means directing them. Anger can be destructive, or it can be a source of drive. Fear can paralyze, or it can sharpen awareness. The key is choice, transforming emotion from an automatic reaction into a conscious decision. When you learn to do that, no situation can overpower you for long. He uses the metaphor of a thermostat. People with emotional mastery have an internal thermostat that keeps their state stable regardless of the external temperature. When stress rises, they cool down internally. When opportunity comes, they heat up their passion. They don't let the environment dictate how they feel, they dictate to the environment through their state. This is why Robbins says emotion is power, because it's the fuel behind every action. Without the right emotional fuel, even the best ideas go nowhere. With it, even average ideas can move mountains. One of the most profound lessons from Robbins' teaching is that you are not your emotions. You are the creator of them. Too often, people say, I am angry, instead of, I'm feeling anger. That small shift in language reminds us that emotions are temporary visitors, not permanent identities. You can acknowledge them, learn from them, and let them go. When you separate who you are from what you feel, you regain power. You realize that emotions are signals, not commands. They are messages pointing you toward something that needs attention. Maybe a change in behavior, a shift in focus, or a new standard. When you interpret emotions as teachers instead of enemies, you grow faster, suffer less, and act wiser. Robbins also introduces the concept of anchoring, linking a specific physical movement or gesture to a peak emotional state, so you can re-access that feeling instantly. It's like creating an emotional button you can press at will. For example, if you recall a moment of deep confidence and anchor it by clenching your fist, you can later trigger that same confidence by repeating the gesture. This is how athletes, performers, and leaders consistently perform at their best. They anchor success states into their physiology. Emotional mastery is about building these tools, so you're never dependent on external motivation again. Ultimately, mastering your emotions means mastering your life. It's not about living in constant positivity. It's about having the flexibility to feel whatever arises without losing control. Success is never a solo act. Behind every great achievement lies a web of relationships, communication, and influence. Tony Robbins reminds us that while personal mastery gives us control over ourselves, true power emerges when we can also inspire, lead, and move others. Influence is the ability to shape perception and behavior, not through manipulation, but through understanding and alignment. Robbins defines influence as the art of meeting people where they are, emotionally and mentally, and guiding them toward a vision that serves both of you. It's the bridge between inner power and outer impact. Without it, even the most passionate vision remains locked inside your mind. Robbins begins by teaching that success is 80% psychology and only 20% mechanics. The strategies, what to do, when to do it, matter, but they pale in comparison to why you do it and how you make people feel in the process. People don't respond to logic, they respond to emotion. Influence is not about arguing better, it's about connecting deeper. Robbins explains that in every interaction, there's an invisible exchange of energy. Whoever has the most certainty leads. Certainty doesn't come from titles, money, or dominance, it comes from state. The person who's emotionally centered, confident, and congruent becomes the leader in any room, because human beings are wired to follow stability. The foundation of influence, according to Robbins, is rapport, a deep sense of trust and connection. Without rapport, no communication is effective. With it, everything becomes possible. Rapport is not about pretending to agree, it's about creating a sense of sameness, aligning with another person's world so they feel understood and respected. Robbins teaches that people like people who are like themselves, or who are like how they would like to be. The key to rapport lies in matching and mirroring, subtly aligning your body language, tone, and tempo with the person you're communicating with. When done authentically, this tells their subconscious, we're the same. Once that connection is established, influence becomes natural, because people trust those who understand them. Robbins also emphasizes that communication is 93% nonverbal. Only 7% of influence comes from words. The rest is tonality, physiology, and energy. You can say the perfect words, but if your tone lacks conviction or your body shows hesitation, the message won't land. The reverse is also true. When your voice, face, and gestures radiate belief, people will feel your message even before they process your words. This is why Robbins trains leaders to master their physiology and tonality, because they are the conduits of emotional transfer. Influence is emotional alignment in motion. But influence is not limited to others. The first person you must influence is yourself. Robbins says, the most important conversation is the one you have with yourself every day. If you can't lead your own mind, you can't lead others. Success begins with self-influence, mastering your internal dialogue so that it drives confidence, clarity, and action. Once you've conditioned that level of congruence, others naturally sense it. They feel drawn to your energy because it represents something rare, certainty in a world full of doubt. In Unlimited Power, Robbins explores the psychology of successful communicators, politicians, leaders, teachers, entrepreneurs, and reveals that they all use similar mental and linguistic strategies. They know how to frame reality in ways that empower others. Robbins calls this reframing, the ability to change the meaning of an experience by shifting perspective. For example, when something goes wrong, a great leader doesn't say, "We failed." They say, "We just discovered a better way not to do it." That subtle reframe transforms fear into curiosity. It moves the emotional state from paralysis to problem-solving. The words we choose shape the emotions of others, and those emotions determine their behavior. Robbins also teaches the importance of values and beliefs in influence. Every person acts according to their internal hierarchy of values, what they consider most important in life. If you try to persuade someone without understanding their values, you'll meet resistance. But when you align your message with their deepest needs, influence becomes effortless. For instance, if someone values security, frame your idea as something that brings stability. If they value freedom, emphasize the independence it creates. Influence is not about forcing your will, it's about aligning your vision with their values so that both sides win. Another critical insight Robbins provides is that success in communication depends on flexibility. The person with the most flexibility controls the interaction. If one approach doesn't work, a skilled communicator changes tone, language, or strategy until they find what resonates. Most people repeat the same failed approach louder or more forcefully. But true influencers are adaptable. They adjust their message to fit the listener's model of the world. Robbins calls this behavioral flexibility, and it's a hallmark of all great leaders. He also delves into the power of questions as tools of influence. Questions direct focus, and focus determines emotion. If you want to influence someone, guide their focus through questions that lead to empowering realizations. Instead of telling someone they need to change, ask, What would happen if you continued down this path? Or, how would it feel to finally achieve what you've always wanted? Questions bypass resistance because they invite reflection instead of confrontation. Great communicators don't tell people what to think, they lead them to discover it on their own. Robbins reminds us that influence carries responsibility. Power without compassion becomes manipulation. True influence uplifts both sides. It inspires growth, not control. The psychology of success and influence, therefore, is not just about achieving outcomes, it's about doing so with integrity. When your intention is to serve, not dominate, your influence becomes limitless. People sense sincerity. Energy doesn't lie. At a deeper level, Robbins connects influence to purpose. He says that those who live with a mission greater than themselves naturally influence others. Purpose creates energy, energy creates passion, and passion creates magnetism. People follow leaders who embody conviction, not because of what they say, but because of who they are. Influence, therefore, is not learned from scripts or tactics. It's born from authenticity. When your words, emotions, and actions align, you become persuasive by nature. Robbins concludes that success and influence operate on the same principle as electricity. Energy flows where attention goes. When you focus your mind, align your body, and speak with emotional congruence, your message electrifies others. You don't need to force influence. You simply transmit certainty, vision, and belief. The psychology of success is built on this sequence. Master yourself, understand others, serve a higher purpose. Those 3 steps form the foundation of leadership in any field. Success isn't about taking more, it's about becoming more. When you raise your emotional and psychological standards, you lift everyone around you. Robbins teaches that the greatest influencers are not those who demand loyalty, but those who inspire transformation. Because influence that changes behavior lasts for a moment, but influence that changes belief lasts for a lifetime. At the end of every pursuit, after all the achievements, the applause, the wealth, the milestones, there comes a moment when a deeper question rises. What was it all for? Tony Robbins reminds us that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Unlimited power is not about gathering trophies or proving worth. It's about awakening the extraordinary potential within and using it to serve something greater than yourself. True power is not the ability to control others. It's the ability to direct your own mind and channel your gifts toward a meaningful purpose. Because when you live with purpose, your power becomes infinite. Purpose turns struggle into strength, obstacles into opportunities, and time into legacy. Robbins teaches that fulfillment comes from growth and contribution, 2 forces that give meaning to everything we do. Growth is the law of life. Whatever isn't growing is dying. Every day that you stretch beyond comfort, you expand who you are. And contribution, giving beyond yourself, is what gives that growth significance. It connects you to humanity, to something larger than your personal story. Robbins says that when you live only for yourself, your power is limited by your own desires. But when you live for a cause, a mission, or a vision that uplifts others, you tap into a source of energy that never runs out. Purpose becomes fuel, a current that keeps you moving forward even when life gets heavy. To live with purpose, Robbins urges us to create a compelling future, a vision so inspiring that it pulls us instead of us having to push ourselves. Motivation fades, vision sustains. When you wake up every morning with a clear sense of what you're fighting for, challenges become stepping stones. The human spirit needs something to move toward. Without a vision, people drift. With it, they rise. Robbins says, people are not lazy. They simply have impotent goals. Goals that don't inspire them. Purpose is not a to-do list, it's a calling, something that excites your soul and serves the world. But how do we discover that purpose? Robbins explains that purpose emerges at the intersection of 3 things: your gifts, your passions, and your impact. Your gifts are your natural abilities, the things you do effortlessly that others find difficult. Your passions are what light you up, the activities that make time disappear. Your impact is how those gifts and passions can make a difference for others. When these 3 align, purpose is born. It's not something you have to find outside yourself. It's something you uncover within, by paying attention to what gives you energy and meaning. Living with lasting power also requires mastering energy, physical, mental, and emotional. Robbins often says that energy is life. You can't create, lead, or love at your highest level if your body is weak or your emotions are drained. He teaches that vitality is a science, a result of the way you move, eat, breathe, and think. Your body is not just a vessel, it's the generator of your emotional and mental state. When you take care of it, everything else elevates. Robbins encourages rituals that ignite your energy every day, from exercise and nutrition to gratitude and visualization. Because your rituals shape your results, and your energy shapes your destiny. Another principle of lasting power is alignment, making sure that what you do, what you say, and what you believe are all moving in the same direction. So many people feel exhausted not because they do too much, but because they live out of alignment. They chase success that doesn't match their values, or please others at the expense of their own truth. Robbins calls this the trap of achievement without fulfillment. The antidote is living congruently, making your daily choices reflect who you really are and what you truly value. When your life aligns with your purpose, energy flows naturally. There's no resistance, no exhaustion, only direction. Robbins also reveals that living with purpose requires one final skill: gratitude. Gratitude is the emotional state that dissolves fear, scarcity, and comparison. It's the recognition that life itself is a gift. No matter how ambitious you are, gratitude keeps you grounded. It transforms "I have to" into "I get to." When you operate from gratitude, you stop chasing happiness and start creating it. Robbins reminds us that gratitude and fear cannot coexist. One cancels the other. The more you cultivate gratitude, the stronger your emotional foundation becomes, and the more magnetic your presence grows. Purpose and gratitude together create resilience, the ability to turn pain into power. Robbins says, life is happening for you, not to you. Every challenge carries a message, every setback contains a lesson, and every heartbreak can awaken a deeper strength. When you live from that perspective, you stop resisting life. You begin to trust it. You realize that the same power that breathes life into galaxies flows through you, and that your story, no matter how difficult, can be rewritten into something extraordinary. The greatest souls in history didn't live easy lives. They lived meaningful ones. Their struggles became their message. Their purpose gave their pain meaning. At the highest level, unlimited power teaches that the purpose of power is to share it. The more you empower others, the more powerful you become. When you lift people, influence with compassion, and lead with integrity, your life becomes a ripple of impact. You stop chasing significance and start creating it. You stop needing validation and start offering value. That's when leadership turns into legacy. Robbins often says, only those who have learned the power of sincere contribution experience life's deepest joy, true fulfillment. Because fulfillment doesn't come from what we get, it comes from what we give. Living with lasting power, then, is not about intensity, it's about consistency. It's the daily practice of aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions with your purpose. It's showing up even when you don't feel like it, trusting the process, and staying true to your vision. Power doesn't come from perfection, it comes from persistence. Every step forward, no matter how small, compounds over time. Robbins says, it's not what we do once in a while that shapes our lives, it's what we do consistently. Lasting power is built moment by moment, through habits that honor your highest self. And ultimately, living with purpose is about living awake, refusing to sleepwalk through life, refusing to let fear or comfort dull your potential. Robbins reminds us that our time is limited, but our impact can be eternal. Every day is a chance to reinvent, to grow, to give, to love more deeply, to serve more fully. You are the author of your story, the sculptor of your destiny, the source of your own energy. The power has always been within you, unlimited, waiting, ready to be claimed. So, as this journey through unlimited power comes to an end, remember, power is not something you acquire, it's something you awaken. It's not about controlling the world, it's about mastering yourself. And when you do that, when your purpose drives you, your beliefs empower you, your emotions serve you, and your influence uplifts others, you'll discover what Robbins has been teaching all along, that the greatest power of all is to live fully, give deeply, and love without limits. That is unlimited power, not someday, not eventually, but right now within you.